Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Realm Talks 2. This is being filmed as part of our Parenthood in the Law campaign, and today I'm really pleased to be speaking to Jen Smith. Jen is a partner in the employment team at Forbes and a mum of two, and Jen has been in my network for a number of years now. We're from the same place in Manchester, so we bonded over that. So I'm really happy to be filming this interview today with Jen. I feel like it's quite fitting as well, just to mention that I'll be filming this on 2 hours sleep because my toddler had other ideas about staying in his bed last night. So already we've started on the parenthood topic. How are you doing today, Jen?
I'm great, thank you. Luckily, I was uninterrupted last night sleep-wise. The first night in a few nights. Normally I'm interrupted by my 4-year-old. But yeah, it's why, I share your pain. But yeah, I did good uninterrupted 7 hours last night, which is great.
Oh, brilliant. No, that's good. No, I'm very pleased for you. And I think just to get us started with the interview, so as part of the campaign that we're doing at the moment, we recently carried out some research at Realm to learn more about sort of the challenges and the opportunities that are facing parents working specifically in the legal profession. So I thought it would just be helpful for our audience if I just give you some of kind of the headline stats that have come out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So quite sadly, actually, 59% of parents said that they felt less optimistic about their career since becoming a parent. And in response to the question, how well do you feel your firm supports you as a working parent, 70% actually said very or fairly well, but there was still 13% of our respondents that said very poorly. They don't feel supported at all by their employer. So I guess first of all, Jen, do these stats surprise you in any way?
They do, in terms of being a cynical lawyer. I was actually surprised with how positive they were. So yeah, so I think they're actually more positive than I anticipated, maybe. But I am a cynical lawyer. But I mean, the 70% is incredible. I think that's that's phenomenal. But I do think I wonder if that would have been the same pre-pandemic. If you'd have asked pre-pandemic, pre-Teams, pre-Zoom, pre-hybrid working, if people felt supported, probably suspect that stat would have been a bit different. But no, I was quite surprised actually at how positive they were.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, with the kind of the rise of flexibility in home working, although a lot of firms are starting to scale back a little bit on that now, which is having impacts in terms of retention, but also, additional pressures on team members. I think you're right. I think maybe it would have been maybe slightly more negative. The general, sort of vibe I got from all of the results that we got is that generally people feel supported, but it's still really hard. And as we'll come on to, the mental load and burnout is still very prevalent, despite the fact that firms are perhaps doing some things at least to try and help. I mean, I'd probably like to focus first of all on your role as a working parent, working in the legal profession, if that's okay. I mean, how did these stats sort of compare to your own experiences as a working parent? In terms of that optimism, have you felt that your career prospects have changed at all since becoming a parent, and more specifically, what's your experience been like at Forbes?
So I suppose to make clear, I'd achieved partner prior to having children. So I was nicely referred to as a geriatric mum. So I was 37 when I had my first, and 40 when I had my surprise little number 2. That was a 40th birthday present that wasn't on my list but came. So I was always clear. I always wanted to be a partner. That was an ambition and a goal of mine. And I achieved that prior to having my children. So I always feel like I need to be fair and make that clear.
Sure. Yeah, you achieved partnership quite, early in your career, proportionately, didn't you? Then
I suppose that the point that I want to make is that I want to make it clear that I didn't have to struggle with the I want to recognise that I got that prior to the struggle of being a pregnant employee, of being a returning mum from mat leave. And I think, would have my career prospects have been impacted if I'd had children earlier on? Yes, I think they would have been, probably. Do I think I would have got the promotions as quick as I had? No, I don't think, if I'm being honest and reflecting, I don't think I would have done. I think it would have taken me longer, ultimately, if I'd had the children earlier on. So I say that wanting to recognise that I do think it is hard for women who are in the wrong firms to them, that sometimes to get the promotions, it can be harder and take longer if when you're having children and you're in that phase of your life. In terms of how my career's changed, I'm a lot more efficient now. I'm a lot more efficient. Procrastination happens a lot less. I have to eat the frog now. Don't know if you've heard that phrase, but I have to eat the frog now. My friend of mine was asking me why when I was talking to her about doing this interview, and I was talking about this, and I was like, well, nothing spurs you on. And I'll have a Gillian Keegan moment now. I'll use some choice language, but nothing spurs you on to get shit done than the fear of being fined for picking your child up late when you're already paying £1,500 a month on childcare. So I know when I get, in my office or at my desk, wherever it is I'm working that day, I need to get my stuff done to be able to make sure that I'm out of that office to go and pick up my children. So I've definitely become more efficient because I don't have that, I can't sit there thinking, well, I can finish this later on in the working day because I know I've got to leave. In terms of being at Forbes, is absolutely incredible. My experience of being a working parent at Forbes just is incredible, and I honestly can't speak highly enough of the culture from that working parent experience. It encourages you to be your absolute authentic self. They really understand the challenges that come with being a working parent. I found out that I was pregnant, as I say, when I was 40, and I was also in my probation period, and so I was very nervous about the pregnancy. It was a high risk pregnancy. I don't mind sharing that, and I was naturally then quite a bit nervous as well about telling my relatively new employer that I had some news. And I can remember sharing with Emma Swan, a boss, that I was pregnant, and she just kept hugging me and just kept telling me what wonderful news this was, and she was so excited for me. Did I know the gender? And I was like, I did at that point, so it was another boy, and she was like, just was saying she'd got 2 boys, and it was just the most wonderful thing. And it just, I feel emotional talking about it now, but her reaction to it, and then the reaction of, if I refer to like the C-suite level, if you like, and then equity partners, was just fantastic. People reaching out to me to say, I heard the good news, congratulations, asking me questions, and it was just so I look back now and just think, God, that was a really lovely time. And so straight away from the get-go, I felt like this huge news in my life was just some news being celebrated by everyone. And it was just, it was just a really, really lovely time, that. And it really, the culture there is fantastic, I find, from a support point of view, talking from a working parent point of view, really from the start of that journey. So even at the pregnancy stage, they then, lots of checking in on me when I was pregnant, making sure, I was okay. Then, coming to visit me when Teddy arrived, Teddy was born, coming to see me, meet Teddy, checking in with me again when I was on mat leave. Asking, if I still wanted to come to things like staff conference or any away days we were doing, so I really did feel like I was still very much, a valued part of the team, being told about any key decisions that were going to be made. And then again, from a sport point of view, they were just wonderful because, not only was I pregnant, but then Freddie would have been 3, turning 3 at the time. And he, bless him, is just one of those children who catches absolutely bloody everything. To the point that, he's had chicken pox twice. I was saying, well, once you've got chicken pox, that's it, it's out of the way. No, you can get it twice. So, like, Freddie had chicken pox twice, he had scarlet fever, he has had loads of chest infections, loads of tonsillitis. I think every holiday bar one we've been on abroad, we've had to make a trip to hospital. The holiday we've just been on, we had to go and visit the doctors then, catches everything. And again, I'm relatively new to Forbes, and I was having to, take time off to go and look after him, pick him up, things like that. And I just always felt so supported like the first thing that Emma would always ask was, what do you need us to take off your desk? What work have you got going on? I would always, a few hours after I've spoken to Emma, Jonathan Holden, who's the National Head of Employment, he would give me a ring to see if I was okay, if Freddie was okay. And it was just like so supported and reassured, and just made to feel like never at any point was I an inconvenience, or moreover was my child, being poorly an inconvenience. And I think, never once has Forbes made me feel any less capable of being the employee that I can be, because I'm juggling, being a mum and also working full time. They have never made me feel any less capable. I feel that I am empowered. I feel totally supported. I feel like that my children's health concerns, my health during my pregnancy, my children starting nursery school, it's all to be celebrated, all to be discussed, and you're encouraged to very loudly parent, which is a phrase that I've learned very recently. I don't know if you've heard of that, but yeah,
it's nice to hear.
Yeah, it's great. I love the fact I know that, Jonathan's children's names, I know Emma's children's names, I know our managing partner's children's names. It's fantastic. It's your family life is there to be celebrated, not to be hidden, and it's just been fantastic. It really has. I can't remember what your question was. I'm really sorry.
I knew our interview would be like this. No, that's perfect. There's so many interesting things that you said there. I think it's really interesting, just that last point about, you knowing your the names of the people that you work with and that are above you in the firm, because one of the things that came out of the research that we did is that people quite strongly felt I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was high, that they didn't have sort of senior representatives in the firm that to use that phrase, parented loudly, and that therefore that they could sort of see someone in the firm being very successful in the firm, but also being a parent at the same time. So it's great that obviously you feel that you've had that experience there.
Yeah.
And I think also picking up on what you're saying about the skills that you've gained since becoming a parent, and I can completely, that resonates with me. I'm so much more organized now, because as you say, you have to be, and I know exactly the nursery penalty that you're talking about. I think it's like £10 per 2 minutes or something at our nursery. But even more than the money, the thing for me is like, if he's the last one there, sad, like playing on his own, I feel absolutely terrible. So all the things that we have to do so that we're doing the same amount of work, or more in some cases, just in a shorter amount of time. And the experience that you've had there, Jen, must breed loyalty for you, and think, I'm not going to go anywhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a catch up one-to-one with Jonathan recently, and we were just chatting about things, and I was like, Jonathan, I will be loyal to you forever. You'll never, I feel like I'm a stick of rock now, I say Forbes all the way through, because they looked after me so much at a time when you are quite vulnerable when you're pregnant. You are, there's huge changes happening physically. So I will be forever loyal and forever indebted, because they really, really did look after me. They really did. So it absolutely does garner that loyalty when you look after your employees.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to go back to the start, when you were talking, and you were being quite honest and saying, I reached partnership before I had children. Not necessarily saying that this would have been your experience at the firms that you've worked for, but what do you think the challenges are then in kind of doing something like reaching partner level if you already have a family?
I guess, if I look back at the way I operated pre-children, just invariably there was like early starts, late finishes, going to lots and lots of different, BD events, a lot more travelling, whether that's doing seminars in different cities, or, maybe going to tribunals in different cities. I just couldn't operate like that now. I just couldn't do it. Suddenly my routine has to be structured around drop off and pick up. I'm much choosier now about the events that I go to and how I spend, not just my personal time if they're evening events, but also time in the day, because you have to be efficient. You have to get your job done. So, I'm much choosier about the events that I go to and how I'm spending my time. But yeah, I just think it must be difficult, I think, for people who are going for promotions who've got children, if you're not in an environment that, you know, enables you to be the best version of yourself, and to still achieve what you can achieve and want to achieve in your career, whilst balancing the fact that one phone call takes you away from your desk and you've got to go home, drop absolutely everything that you're doing. Okay, sometimes your children are poorly, you might still be able to do some work on your laptop, but sometimes they're really poorly and you can't do that. You need to be there for them. So I think it must be really difficult if you're not in that right environment, where a firm is going to make sure that you can achieve what you want to achieve with the new barriers that are in place, and that come with children.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it depends, doesn't it, in some cases, I think, on I guess what's formally known as like a progression framework. I guess, you know, what boxes does someone need to tick to get promoted at any level within a law firm? And some of those things are going to be more challenging. So I think in terms of supporting working parents, it's kind of recognizing that the value that someone adds to a firm might not always look exactly the same, but it's, you know, it's valuable nonetheless.
Yeah. And I think at times I trained between 2007 and 9, and times have changed so much in that time. And, you know, I'd like to think the majority of firms have evolved, but, you know, I can't remember the days when you had to be a full-time, you know, employee if you wanted to be a partner, you know, and that's just shocking. It does not have to be that way. It doesn't. It really doesn't. But, you know, what sort of message does that send? It's not great.
Absolutely. And I guess, you know, in your role, not just as a very successful lawyer and a mum, but also as someone obviously that works within employment as a practice area, what do you sort of see businesses, law firms sort of getting wrong when it comes to supporting parents or not supporting parents, as the case may be?
I suppose it'd be not anticipating their needs and their changing circumstances. So probably expecting the same person maybe to come back from mat leave. That's an example. Expecting the same person to come back from mat leave. Went on mat leave when, you know, nothing prepares you for motherhood, does it? At all. Nothing prepares you for it. So you can read all the books, you can talk to all the people, but until you get your child, and no two children are the same, you just don't know. You know how it's going to go. And then when you return to work, the whole, you know, trying to deal with the juggling of, you know, getting people ready before work, you don't want to be dressed, and, you know, dropping them off somewhere and then having to do your own commute. I think just you need to start recognising that employees just need to be in that more sympathetic, empathetic environment. You know, I was utterly clueless about how my life would change when I became a mum. Absolutely clueless. You know, you know, your life does really turn upside down. But I think not understanding that, you know, that person returning to work has significant responsibilities. And like I say, you know, what you literally look at your phone, and if it says nursery calling, you just know, don't you? You're like, oh my God, what's happening? And you think, oh my God, I'm gonna have to go now. So I think it's all about providing that. It's all about the culture. They've got to get the culture right, and it's about providing that culture that allows people to feel they can be their authentic self. They can parent loudly. They can talk about the fact that they've got children. They can talk about the responsibilities that come with being a parent. So for me, the most important thing that firms can do to provide the right culture. So I suppose in answer to your question, what do we see that goes wrong? It's providing the wrong culture. That doesn't allow people to prioritise, you know, the fact that, you know, they've got a home life as well as, you know, a very important job.
And that very often that home life has to come first.
Yeah, well, yeah, it doesn't. You know, ultimately, you're a primary caregiver. You know, like I say, if you get a phone call, you've got to go and pick them up. You know, we've got to go and get. You know, Teddy's got to have his jabs this week, so that's something that, you know, I need to take him to go and, you know, have his jabs done. You know, to do that, it's hard, but I really think it's so important. You can have all the policies in the world, you can have all these wonderful policies that are written in, a really, exciting, user-friendly way. But if you don't have the right culture, it's just not really worth the paper it's written on, I don't think.
Yeah.
It's got to, you've got to have the right culture.
Yeah,
For
absolutely.
people to thrive.
And I think, you said the word inconvenience before, and at Forbes you've never felt like you're an inconvenience for kind of, having the audacity to want children.
Yeah,
And I think, the business case, not just the moral standpoint with this, but doing the right thing by people. Um, the business case for this is we're in a legal talent market crisis. There's fewer
yeah,
candidates out there and people willing to move than ever before. And I mean, obviously, we're a recruitment agency. We know how many vacancies are open at the moment within firms at all levels. And yet firms are, as I said at the beginning, scaling back on things like flexibility and home working at the moment. And there's this whole sort of, group of people for who that's going to prove a real challenge for. And we're seeing a lot of the impact of that, sorry, in the market. And people are, moving with their feet, and
yeah,
and moving firms to kind of seek that elsewhere. But I think, the opportunity that there is for firms to get this right and be, a great place for parents to work, because so many firms are getting it wrong. If you can
yeah,
get it right, I mean, you're a great
yeah,
example of that. You've got a great, lawyer that's going to work very hard for you and stay for a long time.
yeah. I mean, I'm very clear and speak openly about the fact that I'll be very happy if the remainder of my career I'm spent at Forbes, because I'm incredibly happy. Yeah, I'm just incredibly happy in my job. It's a fantastic, exciting firm to work for. And I think that's the other thing as well that like has annoyed me in the past, where it's seen that once you have children, it's like, oh, okay, well, they want to take the foot off the gas, don't they? No, not at all. Why on earth? Or well, if I'm talking about, from the mum perspective, if the mum wants to do that, then okay, absolutely fine, that's fine. But a lot of women, I think, from following your career, Sarah, and so we don't want to take our foot off the gas at all. If anything, work is our salvation. It's my sanctuary. It's my spa.
Please let me go to work. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't wait to go back to work after my holiday. 2 weeks with them, my goodness, like, yeah, 1 year old and a 4-year-old. But it's definitely an incredible home for me.
Yeah.
And it enabled me to carry on being as ambitious as I felt prior to having children. So yeah, it's for me, if someone is struggling with the juggle, are concerned about having parents, due to where they work, they're at the wrong firm. It's not the right company for them, whether it's a law firm, whether it's another business, it's not the right company for them, it's not the right firm for them. So you just need to go and find your new home and find your natural home. Because you don't have to work in, a toxic culture, and you don't have to work for a firm or for a company that doesn't embrace women having children.
Absolutely. And I think something else that kind of came out of the research that we did, the people that I think felt maybe more poorly supported didn't necessarily feel that it would be better anywhere else. And I think that's probably maybe the saddest thing, yeah, for me, that came out. And obviously we know as recruiters that isn't the case. And again, you're, fantastic evidence of that. But I think also, it's on law firms to kind of, as you talked before about, parenting loudly, like they should, be loud as employers about, the policies that they
Yeah,
do offer, the culture that they have specifically for parents. Because, if this research does prove anything, it's that not everyone's getting it right, clearly. So the
yeah,
opportunity for firms to, maybe look at their policies that they've got in place and then make sure that that's being
yeah,
communicated to the talent market,
yeah,
is really, really
yeah.
important. Are there
And
any,
I think
sorry, Jen, were you going to say something then?
No, I was just going to say, I think communication is key, and things like fertility policies, I think they're so important now. And you think if you've got an employee who's going through IVF, what happened to a friend of mine actually? She works for a huge global company going through IVF, and she had a new interim manager because her manager was on maternity leave. The individual was based in, I thought it was Canada, I think. So they didn't have that face-to-face relationship, and she didn't want to have to tell him that she was about, a lot of people go through IVF, you don't tell your nearest and dearest. So she didn't want to have to tell this individual that, she maybe had to take some time off to give some appointments, things like that. And I said, just look in your staff handbook, there's a good chance, with it being such a, a huge business, they may have a fertility policy. And they did. And she was so happy, and she was so glad she told me to look there, because it's just giving me all the answers I had to all the questions I have. And I don't need to speak to, my line manager and tell him what I'm going through. It was nothing about this particular individual, it was just, it's such sensitive and personal news that, she didn't want to have to share that with her immediate line manager. And they had a policy there that then told her, without having to ask any other questions of any people, exactly what she had to do in the circumstances. So I think having policies also just really helps employees, who are going through really, tough and sensitive times. Things as well, like, for individuals, for employees who, suffered miscarriages, bereavement, to have those policies in your handbook is really important. We definitely are seeing a shift. I think there's definitely a cultural shift now to having more, I don't really want to say, family-friendly policies, but to have some more of those, more personal policies, including the handbooks. We are seeing that shift, but there's still a long way to go. There's still a long way to go. But I do think it's an education piece as well. I think, like people like me, employment lawyers, we need to be speaking more at events about this when we're educating our, HR practitioners. We need to be, flagging this with them and saying, we now need to be considering in our, staff handbooks, having, the following policies. So I think there's still, a big education piece to do on it as well.
Yeah, I think you're right. And again, I think what came out of the research was that actually a lot of the policies that firms could have in place, a lot of firms don't actually. And it might not necessarily be because they don't want to have those policies in place. It might just be because perhaps they just haven't got them in place yet, or it's not something that they've maybe thought about. Or the experiences that we're maybe talking about aren't the personal experiences of the management team, and therefore, it's not something that's kind of occurred to them. But as you say, I think it's great doing interviews like this, because it's something that, I'm hoping that this interview will appeal to lawyers, but also law firms that want to learn more about how they can support parents more, and those that want to become parents in the future, and kind of really use this as an attraction tool and retention tool as well. Is there anything else that you think firms can do to support parents more fairly, either on the policy side or, as you say, culturally? And something that came out of the research as well is that we had some people complete the research that aren't parents and don't want to be parents. And some people actually felt quite strongly that they were almost penalised in their firm for not being a parent.
Right.
In the sense that they saw a lot of their colleagues kind of, getting to leave early, for example, to do school pickups. So it is a balance, isn't it, in terms of, I guess, not alienating people or punishing them for not having children. How would you advise that balance is struck? That's not too difficult a question.
No, it's difficult, but first of all, I was that person. So I'm, I always want to be very clear and transparent and honest. I was that person who felt bitter, sitting at my desk, when I, being more often than not the last one in the employment team, working the latest and thinking I'm the only one here because I don't have, children, and I'm always the one who's asked to do something last minute. Oh, well, Jen can do this, Jen can go to that event. So I totally recognise, and I was that person and felt like that for quite a long time. Like I said, I was 37, when I was pregnant with Freddie. So I that does really resonate with me. My brother and sister, neither of them have children, both very career driven. My brother's who lives in Spain now, he's deputy head teacher of an international school. My sister's chief people officer for a huge organisation, for a PLC. And we have this discussion as well, where she says whether it's Claire wanting to go to the gym or whatever her plans are after work, for her it's as important as well for her to be able to leave a desk and go and do what she wants to do. So I do think it's tricky. It's hard for companies. It's hard for businesses, because you want all of your employees to feel valued, and that every single one of them is as important as the next. So I think, again, it comes back to culture, doesn't it? So it comes back to a culture of fairness, and like I said, you need to have your you need to have this a friendly culture that sits alongside the policies that you will be creating to ensure people take up the options that are right for them, for their future, without the fear of being judged for it, I guess. Because actually you're saying from that, the stats from the research, people felt they were being judged if they did have children, if they didn't have children, if they did have children, if they didn't have children. So I think for me, it's about having the right culture where people are encouraged to be themselves, allowed to be themselves, being their authentic selves. I guess it's about that, really, isn't it? But yeah, it's really hard, that, because I vividly remember there's one time in particular I was sitting at my desk and seeing someone leave and thinking, oh, I wish I could leave. But of course, now I know, as a working mum of two, and this particular individual had two children. Now I know she's probably logging off from a computer, running out of the office, not wanting to actually leave the computer. She probably still had loads of work she still had to do. It was before remote working, really, so you didn't have laptops, just go home to do your work. And and she's probably thinking, oh my God, I've got to now run to Manchester Piccadilly, now get the train, go and do pick up. So it's about creating that culture as well. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we all know the day job is much more preferable to for me. The day job sometimes is not preferable to the job. So I guess in that instance the culture wasn't right, because probably both the person with the children and the person without the children, both was probably feeling quite frustrated with the environment and the culture that we were working in. So again, for me, I think it's all about the firm's culture. Yes, the policies are important, and yes, we have to have these, certain policies we do for the legal requirements. But I do really think it's about the culture. It's not any kind of relationship, isn't it? It's, whether you're husband and wife or your friendships. It's about what makes you tick and about that culture. And I think nowadays it's, well, like you said, the stats. I keep looking. If you see where I'm looking, I'm looking back at the stats that you were given. It's actually flexibility is the priority for a lot of individuals, not necessarily finances anymore. It's people now look at much more at what the firm is about. When we're doing our graduate recruitment, some of the questions we're asking, we want to see your ESG policy. So it matters to people across the spectrum. Right from that junior graduate recruitment stage, right the way through to people like me who've got children and child care responsibilities.
Yeah, absolutely, you're right. And no firm is going to be able to offer everything and please everyone.
Yeah.
I think how we advise firms when they're looking at their employer value proposition, their EVP, is that don't try and be 10 out of 10 with everything, but think about what your strengths are now, and just try and build your EVP from that. Bearing in mind, we know again through other bits of research that we do on an annual basis, that the three kind of deal breakers for people in terms of attraction and retention are pay is a factor, I think, and even more so this year because of obviously the cost of living increases, and inflation, etc. But you're right, the flexibility and home working point, massive factor for people, particularly if I know we've talked about our policies here at Realm before, and we get tons of flexibility. So that instance, as you say, you're running out the door in the morning, the toddler won't get dressed, won't put his shoes on, you've had 2 hours sleep, and you're trying to be somewhere for 9 o'clock. That generally doesn't happen here. It's great because our MD has his own 2-year-old that's like sort of 6 months younger than Noah, so that really helps as well. But if I didn't have the flexibility that I do here, I would probably be working part-time or certainly reduced hours. And that's no good for my employer, because we're in a talent crisis and we need bums on seats. They need me within the business, hopefully. And that's probably common for almost all businesses at the moment. So as I say, it is a real opportunity for firms to get this right. And I think, as I said earlier in the interview, we are seeing firms scale back on that flexibility. So last year, in terms of home working, the average number of days that a firm offered was 3.9. When we've done the research again this year, it's 2.7. And I empathise with that, because when I speak to law firms in my role, a lot of the time people are worried about supervision and I guess learning experience of junior solicitors, which is valid, you know, absolutely valid. You do sometimes get the impression that it is more of a cultural thing sometimes though, or there is the supervision element, but really, you know, people kind of want it to go back to, you know, more how it was before the pandemic when everyone was there because people are mindful of, you know, office culture and things like that. So but I think it's going to be a very interesting landscape for people that do want slash actually need that flexibility going forward. And I think we'll probably see people moving firms because of that, but also potentially people leaving the workforce or going part-time, which isn't good for anyone. So yeah, I think those are kind of the challenges that we've got in front of us, really.
I mean, in terms of law, though, my perspective is that, you know, we're so heavily monitored. You know, you're recording in 6-minute units. Very, very, very easy to quickly see someone who is not, you know, working effectively, you know, from home. So you know, it's an industry that you would very quickly be able to identify that. But I'm also acutely aware that I've got a newly qualified solicitor starting on Monday. Typically, our team, we're not in the office on a Monday. Well, the first Monday of every month we do all come together, but then Brenda will work from Monday. But you know, for a first day, I want us all to be in the office, and we're going for a team lunch, like saying learning by osmosis. And so I think it is a balancing act, and you know, it's I don't really know what the perfect answer is. I'm not sure there is a business out there yet that does. I just think you've got to be willing to adapt, willing to change, and treat everyone individually. Really, because everyone's individual circumstances are different. You know, we're talking about being, you know, parents, but you know, people have all sorts of care and responsibilities, don't they? You know, not just about children. So I think you've just got to make sure that you're a very empathetic employer, and make sure that people feel, you know, that they can talk at work and they can, you know, talk about what the stresses are in their life.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do get firms, you know, clients of ours asking us, you know, what should we be doing to improve on this? So, open invitation to any firms that want to speak to Realm about that. We can let you know kind of what the landscape is looking like in terms of policies and things like that, and give you a steer on that. Just finally, then, Jen, what I think that's a really great key takeaway that you've just given there for firms. I guess on the employee side, on the lawyer side, you know, what advice would you perhaps give to someone that is either already a parent or thinking at some point in the future they would like to become a parent, and they're maybe a bit worried about also juggling a career in the law?
Find the right home for you. Find the right home. Law is an incredible career. It's really exciting. I absolutely love my job. I love the people I work with. And you can love your job. You can love being a parent. It's really hard. We're not going to dress it up, are we, Sarah? The struggle of the juggle is real. It's hard, but if you're in the right environment, you know, the right firm, you absolutely can smash it. You really can. You know, so I would say definitely look around you and just think, is this, you know, is this a team? Is this a firm that I can, you know, you don't want to just survive at work, you want to thrive, you know, and just look around you and just think, will I be able to still thrive with, you know, coping with the you know, the juggle, and still, you know, working in a really, really fast-paced, demanding job. So I would say it's all about finding that right home for you. Other tips, you can put potato waffles in the toaster. That's probably one of the greatest tips I've ever had. Pull-up nappies, don't bother with the ones where you have to lie them down. Pull-up nappies, they're the way forward. They're probably my best tips.
I love that we finished on potato waffles and nappy pants. Absolutely. I didn't know that about potato waffles, so I'm going to use that. I didn't know. No. I did know about the nappy pants. We've been on nappy pants since I think Noah was about 5 months old or something. Whenever he was big enough to fit in them, we were like, yeah, that's what we're going to do.
Potato waffles, yeah, get them in the toaster.
I don't really buy potato waffles, so, but now I know that you can put them in the toaster. Yeah, I'm going to send you a picture later of my toasted potato waffle. That's absolutely brilliant. So we've got a little bit of, philosophical, a bit of practical, all thrown into the interview. So thank you. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jen. It's been absolutely fantastic to hear, not only about your personal experience. I'm so made up for you that, you are working somewhere that you feel so supported and that you can thrive. It's this is what we aim to do here at Realm, is to fit people in with those firms, where they can just feel that everything. You know what it feels like when you found your firm, don't you? I think, and that's what we aim to do here.
If I do a career switch and I want to be a recruiter, tell Dwayne I'm coming to Realm.
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, we'd love to have you. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for speaking to us today, and I hope you get another full night's sleep. That's the main thing.
Yeah, and I hope you get more hours.
I'm off for a kip now. Thanks so much, Jen.